How do we strike that balance in relationships of knowing when not to compromise?
So there's a particular focus on the change, right? So why am I changing, right? That's why I don't think, like, when my wife we were having this conversation in Niagara Falls, that the other person has to change in order for them to seem new and exciting.
Oddly enough.
Yeah.
Like intentional inaction has allowed me to progress a lot more in that area than sort of like this white knuckling, I'm gonna take ownership, I'm gonna figure it out, I'm gonna like force myself to change or understand, which is really funny. There becomes, like this self-defeating mechanism I find often in myself of like a lack of interest or like a lack of curiosity or being in awe of myself.
I think one of my favorite prayers is like, Lord, help me to see what you see in me. Help me to delight in the things that you delight in me. And like with the walk with my Lord, this is one of the things that the Lord has like really challenged me in, walking with me in my journey of saying, like, you don't need to be known by all these people, right? For you to have self-worth. You just need to be known by me.
Welcome to the Lay Life Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Ferraro. Join us as we journey together to see the church come alive through real conversations with real people. Enjoy the episode.
Well, gamers, back and again. This is what's awesome about editing, because I can say whatever I want right now.
Oh, really? They'll never know.
They'll never. I'm gonna clear the old throat here. Is this mine?
No, that is yours.
Awesome. My last sip. Well, welcome back, everyone. Episode 5, here with a dear buddy of mine, Chris Savageu. He was my grand residence director many years ago. Yeah, we had coffee this morning, and then I tied him up and forced him to come down to my basement to record a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
That didn't actually happen. But yeah, I don't know, man. We were talking a lot about it upstairs, of like this sense of adventure, and that true adventure is found, like, partially in novelty. I think is the most superficial aspect, that we start there, that we just like things that are new.
Yeah.
And they're exciting because they're new, so we haven't experienced them, or we haven't heard of them before. But then we were talking about a deeper sense of adventure, which is how do we experience it in the day-to-day. And a lot of what we had mentioned and kind of what we're wrestling through was like this idea of a change in perspective.
Yeah.
That perhaps if we just saw something differently, we would have a higher level of gratitude and appreciation. And I know, and I kind of want to hear more of what you would have to say. Like you said, this is something that you and your wife have been discovering kind of through your marriage, like a greater sense of how do we reinvigorate? How do we... I kind of liked it, the thing we were talking about before we started this. You had said like your wife had asked you a question once of, what was it? I want you to say it because you'll word it better.
We were in Niagara Falls for our 5th anniversary. So, yeah, little plug there. We were walking back from Niagara Falls, and she was just asking a question of like, how can we keep our marriage new? How can we keep it fresh? She was asking that question, which is a good question, I think. But one of the things that was behind it was like, okay, what can I do to keep you interested in me?
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't really like the question that much. We were actually kind of like grappling over the question. So one of the things I was really reflecting on while we were walking is like, okay, why didn't I like this question? What was bothering me about this? I think the big thing that bothered me about this was like, I don't think it's on the person to change for me to stay interested in them. I think it's something internally in me that I have to have a different perspective in order to come to know that person more intimately and new. And one of the things I love so much about human beings, about the person, is that they almost have an infinite depth to them, to the point where like this lifetime I will not fully know my wife.
Yeah.
You know, like there's so much more that I get to know about them throughout this time. Yeah. It would take like 10 times the lifetime I have now for me to like fully understand, and maybe not even that, fully understand the other person. So like I think there's a difference that has to happen in me to like come to know her more intimately and differently. Like even like this past, like for example, my wife and I were talking, and I learned something about her life, about like our family history
hmm
that I didn't know before. Like she saw something differently because of her family of origin, her story that was different from the way that I viewed things. It was just like something so simple as the fact of like, okay, her family did something different than
hmm
my family did. So it was from a different perspective. And I didn't know that about her before. And like, because I got to know that, I was able to love that part of her. St. Thomas Aquinas has this interesting phrase, and I think it's more of a paraphrase from what he said, but knowledge causes love, which causes unity. The more I got to know my wife in that small detail, the more I was actually able to love her through in that and through that,
Yeah.
and the more that like kind of like joined us together in a new intimate way. So like
Yeah.
I think when we're talking about adventure, especially like in this context, in the context in which we're using like marriage as an example, I think one of the things that is important is, you know, having a new perspective on what it means to have adventure in the day-to-day life.
Yeah.
You know,
I think I want to go back to what you said. There's 2 points that I found really interesting, especially how they connect. One was when you were talking about that experience you and your wife had at Niagara Falls and kind of wrestling with that question, like, I don't like that question. And then what you were saying about what Thomas says of knowledge leads to love, which leads to unity. And so, what actually is that balance of, in a proper way, like changing for those we love? Like I just think of like,
yeah,
I love Jesus Christ, and so I try to change every day to become more like Him,
yeah,
so I can come into union with Him. And that's proper. That's not like, oh, I'm not, I'm just like compromising or I'm trying to become someone for someone else. It's like I'm actually becoming, in a sense, more fully who I am. So how do we strike that balance in relationships of knowing when not to compromise? Of like, okay, this person is trying to make me someone I'm not, or it's like perhaps this person's actually calling something greater out of me, and I need to get my act together. How do we strike that balance, and how do we know the difference?
No, that's a great question. I think part of it has to look internally in yourself and be like, okay, where am I going? Right? What is my end? Right? And if a particular part of yourself isn't like oriented towards the end goal, which of course is Christ for all of us, then yeah, I would say, yeah, that part of you has to change.
Yeah.
Right? But what I was particularly talking about is like, okay, and what my wife was trying to get out of is how do I keep you interested in me, right? I think changing just to keep someone interested in you, I don't know is the right approach, right? So there's a particular focus on the change, right? So why am I changing, right? Am I changing to love my wife more? Is there a part of me that is selfish? A part of me that is just full of pride that I need to change in order to love her better? For example, one of the things like I like to sleep in. I do, right? But I learned over a conversation with my wife that when I sleep in and like cause her to just hang out with the kids by herself, which is really stressful in the morning because the kids have a lot of needs and stuff like that. That part of me is very selfish and self-serving about just sleeping in, and I have to actually get up and help serve my family, right? And serve my wife, especially in this time. She's like 24 weeks pregnant, and a lot of energy is spent on growing this baby and stuff like that. She needs my help in this area. So I have to change a particular thing that I enjoy for the benefit of the greater whole, right? But when it comes to like seeing another person as an adventure, seeing another person as interesting, I think we have to change the perspective in ourselves rather than have the other person change, right?
Well, I guess on that note, like in relationship, there's the classic quote, "It takes two to tango."
Oh yeah, 100%.
And so one thing I kept thinking time and time again as you were speaking is, what do you do when you come to that point of confrontation of this isn't an area where it's like, okay, I have a lack of love or lack of virtue, so I need to change. It's like, this is just a peculiarity about me. It's something that's unique to me, or maybe I have a little tendency or quip or whatever it is, and that annoys my spouse, or that
Kind of, yeah.
frustrate that's friends, or they just prefer something else. Maybe they aren't annoyed by it, but they'd rather do X, Y, or Z. What do you? Because I agree. I think fundamentally the change that should be happening is probably them in their perspective, which will lead to acceptance, which will lead to knowledge and love, and then unity with you. But again, right, it takes two to tango. You can't force that on people.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that? Maybe in terms of like having that conversation when it's like, hey, I feel like you need to change, and it's actually not me that's the problem. Like you wouldn't say it that way, but it's like
Yeah.
sometimes that's the reality of like you're being affected, and maybe and I'm sure there's probably a good reason. Maybe they don't realize, or again they have a different perspective, and that's probably part of the issue is they're not seeing you guys aren't seeing things in the same way. So obviously there's a discord there. But yeah, what are maybe some of those ways you would either go about that conversation, or like if it's not a committed relationship, like it's not a marriage, maybe you're dating someone, or maybe it's just a friendship, and you keep finding that rift, like maybe knowing when it's time to kind of be like, okay, this is just not that type of relationship in terms of depth. So maybe I should stop investing there, or maybe I should cut it off. How do we kind of know how to navigate those nuances?
Yeah. So like, I think one of the things we have to think about is, okay, what relationship is this, right? So when I heard like, okay, there's these little things that might like someone perhaps uncomfortable,
Yeah.
or like irritated. I think it really is kind of a both and involved. Maybe I have to change something inside of me because I have the wrong perspective about it. But first, like, let's just say it's a friendship.
Yeah.
Where like, yeah, this particular thing really irks me. It just annoys me to no end. It might be even a pet peeve of mine, right? Like, let's just take chewing with your mouth open, right? So like that can be super annoying. And I understand that for other people because I self-disclosure, but I do that and it annoys people.
Yeah.
The first thing is just like have a good conversation about it. And I think this is something I think I've seen you and other people do really well is like just come with a non-confrontational like kind of attitude towards it. And just I think the first thing is try to seek understanding, chewing with your mouth open, not that deep, right? But maybe it's more of okay, when I do this person gets incredibly annoyed by it, and you notice that, right? So maybe it's a conversation of, so why I notice this, why do you get annoyed by these things? Or maybe you wouldn't say it directly that direct.
Yeah.
But you try to like bridge that gap through understanding and asking questions and drawing that out of them rather than just being so confrontational about it and just being very direct. Stop doing that. That annoys me. Stop it. So
Not but you.
yeah. Coming with more of a conversation with an attitude of, okay, I'm going to seek understanding rather than just be accusatory. Because there's always two sides to one story, right? For example, going back to a more in-depth relationship with my wife, because that's what I know, right? I'm not saying I'm an expert in marriage or anything like that. I've only been married for 5 years. So like, but the more I am married, the more I learn like what it means to be married, the more I learn to sacrifice. Right? So like 10 years from now, I'll probably look back at this and be like, why did I even say that? Yeah. But like going back to my wife, one of the things right away, we would play this game of like, why do you do it this way game? And one of the things that we would first say, it wasn't an actual game, right? It wasn't an actual game, but it was something internally that we kind of did. And one of the things...
Was it playful, or was it more accusatory in nature?
I would say it was probably more accusatory in nature. It was all eternal. We would vocalize it a little bit and kind of make like funny quips about it and stuff like that. But one of the things she noticed was like, okay, I do the dishes weird, right? Like she would fill up the tub, or not the tub, the sink with water, put dishes in, and start scrubbing that way. I would just keep the faucet running.
Oh, I do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I just keep the faucet running and wash it that way. So she was like, she actually asked a good question. It's like, okay, why do you do it that way? Which is a good question. And a lot of it comes from like family of origin stuff. Like my parents did it that way. Or Like, yeah, this is just something we did growing up because it was,
Mhm.
uh, we thought it was faster, or, there could be a million examples or a million reasons why we kind of did that.
Mhm.
But like really coming from a stance of like, okay, there's a reason why this person does this.
Mm.
Right? They might not even know the reason
Yeah.
why. Like they might have to take some time and reflect on, okay, why do I do this? So like, and I think in any relationship, you need to start from that place of curiosity
Yes. Yeah.
and try to seek
Yeah.
understanding.
Yes.
It's like Saint Francis, right? Like, let me be. I'm going to butcher this quote, but let me be more quick to understand rather than be understood, right? And I think that's just a beautiful way to honor the person rather than just be accusatory
Yeah.
right away.
I think that's I really like.
I don't know if I fully answered your question because I think there was a lot there.
Yeah, there was, but I think that's a really interesting strand. One thing I actually love that as like an exercise. That's kind of why I was asking interiorly, was it more playful or accusatory by nature?
Yeah.
But I think that's such a brilliant way to continue to like discover and bring newness into a relationship, because it doesn't really require a lot of effort. It's not like, okay, we have to like plan an event or really think deeply about these things, whether it's a romantic partner or a deep friendship, or maybe where there's been the potential for things to just get stagnant or become familiar. And like we were talking about earlier, how do we find this sense of adventure? How do we reinvigorate, find a new perspective? I think it's such a delightful way, in a playful sense, of like playing a game of why do you do what you do? Because what it does is, when you enter into a thing of like, let's do that together, like let's play, why do you do what you do, it just creates a breeding ground for curiosity, for discovery, which then leads to knowledge and connection and love and intimacy, which is what we all want in our relationships. But I think it like kind of casts aside a potential blur of like blame or shame or accusation, because that is continues to be one of the hardest things I feel like I always have to figure out how to navigate in terms of confrontation or bringing things up, is starting it. Because how you start is typically how you go and how you'll finish. And so it's like, how do you create a certain space, expectation, framework to have a conversation and interaction with that becomes really healthy and helpful and actually bonding, rather than either you guys miss each other, like you're actually not communicating what you want to, or people have different understandings of what this conversation is about. Something I heard, I don't do it very well, I don't do it very often, but I think it's a good idea, is to, when you're having a conversation, a deeper conversation with someone, is to define the type of conversation you're having.
Yeah.
So are we having a practical conversation, like we're trying to work towards a solution? Are we having an emotional conversation of like, you just need to be heard, you just want to process, or like you feel a certain way about something, or like different other types of conversations? And I think that's very helpful, because it gives you sort of the path you guys need to go down together. And so it's, with that example, the reason I really like that, of this idea of like, let's play a game called, what do you do, is it sets a tone of curiosity and exploration, so that when I ask questions, or like when I challenge things, or even when I make, that's kind of weird, it doesn't come across as you're wrong, or I have a different way that's better. It's like, oh, this is neat, we're just like discovering, oh, I would have never thought to do it that way, or I didn't think that's why you would, you would wash the dishes that way, or like your grandma told you when you were 7 that if you fill the sink, like fish are gonna come out of the thing, or something like that, right? And then it brings out little stories and different things that. So I think I think it's really interesting.
I was talking to one person, and we were kind of having a discussion of like basically why they were doing something like this. And this is why I say like people have such almost an infinite depth to them.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think like when my wife we were having this conversation in Night Falls, that the other person has to change in order for them to seem new and exciting.
Yeah.
Because there's always something new and exciting about that person. Like, we just have to have a flip of attitude of, okay, there's something I don't know about this individual. But I was talking to this person, and they were telling me about, okay, their kind of their family of origin and how they viewed housework, for example. And one of the things that they did is like their mom would take care of everything in the house, because the dad was busy like starting this business,
Okay.
right? So like the mom would take care of all the dishes and stuff like
Mm.
that. So from that, she felt she had to do all these things. And that just brought a whole new perspective to, okay, this is why you do this, because you saw your mom do
Yeah.
this, and now you feel all this pressure to do the same thing because that's what you learned when
Mhm.
you were growing up, right? Is this is what it means to
Mhm.
be a mother, or this is what it means to be a woman, right? Which was super fascinating for me because it brought a whole new
Mhm.
perspective to me about this individual, right?
Are there are there
Yeah.
things at this point in your life, whether it's in your marriage, in your professional life, in your walk with the Lord, things that you now look back on and have started to question, or like things that you've begun to change because you're like, oh, I'm realizing now the place that that's coming from, and perhaps like I've bought into something that I wasn't supposed to. Like, I don't know, what have
I
been?
kind of bought in a lie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things, there's two things that come to mind right away. One of them is more of like an in-depth personal thing, and one of them is more like a practical thing. So
Yeah.
we'll start with the practical, right? Because it's less personal. But
Yeah.
like we'll start with that one. So like one of the things I grew up with was this kind of like misformed understanding of money, right? That money was this kind of like consuming thing
Yeah.
that, and I didn't want to, and because I saw that, I didn't want anything to do with it, right? But like through my relationships and like through a lot of different like inner healing, I've come to a perspective that, it's okay to like have money.
Yeah.
It's okay um to build wealth as long as you're poor in spirit to
Hmm.
begin with. If you have that attitude of being poor in spirit, you don't have to get rid of all your riches unless the Lord calls you to that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Some people are called to that. Like the rich young man in the story of the gospel, he's called to give up all his riches, but he goes away sad. Some people are called to do that, but it really comes from like, okay, I can be poor in spirit and also build up wealth and have a healthy
Mhm.
understanding of money. The other thing that's kind of more personal is this, we have this, I think, in our culture, this like formed, or like, what's the right word to think about it as, like poor perception, unhealthy perception of what it means to be known.
Mm.
And like with the walk with my Lord, this is one of the things that the Lord has like really challenged me in, is that because we live in this, especially technological age,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
I mean, we're doing a podcast right now, like we're like everyone's on YouTube. There's a desire
Yeah.
for fame,
Yeah.
stuff like that. That the Lord's really kind of walking with me in my journey of saying, like, you don't need to be known by all these people, right? For you to have self-worth. You
Mhm.
just need to be known by me, right? And that's something like when I was younger, um, and still kind of coming out of that
Yeah.
now is, I would want to do all these things to be seen or be popular
Mhm.
or to be known by all these other individuals. And when we're coming to a place of like, um, of being known by the Lord, that's so much deeper and so much better than being known by all these individuals just in like a minute sense.
Yeah.
Right? The Lord knows us so deeply, right? I think finds us so fascinating too. I think that's the beautiful thing about the Lord. Like he knows us completely,
Yeah.
but he still finds us incredibly fascinating.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I don't know. It's not always about as much answering the questions, but
Yeah.
I liked what you said, and I don't know. I feel like I often I feel like I don't often have that experience of myself,
Mm,
and I'm like fascinated by myself.
yeah.
That I find my own person and life and story intriguing, and it's like, why is that? And I think there's one element of I'm just living in it, right? Like I am myself, so it is my reality,
Yeah.
right? That I experience Michael constantly. So I mean, even like what we were talking about earlier with the sense of adventure and rediscovering intimacy and newness and novelty in relationships, like even with ourselves,
Oh yeah, that's so true.
it's like there's a need for that process. And it's, I'm sure we've both experienced this, certain people, especially people that you really care about, they'll compliment you or they'll congratulate you on something. And at least for me, especially my tendencies are I'm an achiever. So what that means for me on when it comes to setting goals, pursuing them, is my base standard is excellence. And so if I do something really well, it's not like exciting. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that's the bare minimum. Like, what are you proud of?
Yeah.
And so, which is really hard. And I've actually struggled, even with my job, I've really struggled with that. I've done really, really well. Like month after month, I've been within the top 5 of my company. And
That's fantastic.
I know, and so it's like objectively, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
It's like my second month, I was number 1 like, for sales and stuff. And so it's like I should be like I 3x number 2, like
Yeah.
number, and I should be like thrilled. But the part of it, but it's so I don't know. I think it's just like part of how I'm structured and in how I operate. It's like that achiever mindset, which there's a lot of beauty and a lot of strength and a lot of things that I really love. But then there's also its downfalls. And one of the downfalls is like I can look at that and be like, yeah, but you could have done more. What about those meetings that you didn't make the sale, or you didn't make that connection come through, or those days where you could have done more but you kind of didn't because you were lazy or etc. Or you got complacent. And there becomes, like this self-defeating mechanism I find often myself of like a lack of interest or like a lack of curiosity or being in awe of myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite what to do with that or where that stems from, but it's like almost a sense of disbelief of like, when you said that, like there was something in my heart that's like, I don't know if I experience that as truth with God, that he's enthralled and fascinated by me.
Yeah.
And again, there's been different seasons and different waves, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff God's doing in my life right now where there's a lot of purging, there's a lot of desolation and difficulty. And so I understand that's a work he's doing in me. So that also gives me perspective to be like, it's okay. That like there's like a lot of inner turmoil and frustration and anxiety and sort of this like sense of meaninglessness and a lot of these grappling with questions. But then there's also something on the other end of like, okay, like that's it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. It's not healthy. It's not proper and integrated. That Michael, that you have this sort of lack of appreciation and wonder, and in a sense like self-enjoyment.
Yeah.
I'm not really quite sure like what to do about that, but I just know that
Yeah.
it's like it's my one of my current experiences.
Yeah. I think we all have times where we don't enjoy ourselves. Yeah, I mean, like one of the things that I think is really helpful is to recognize, okay, kind of like the Lord delights in me,
Yeah.
and starting with that fundamental and foundational understanding that there's something about us
Mhm.
that the Lord just delights in.
Mhm.
I might not know what that is, but it's definitely something to like take to prayer. I think one of my favorite prayers is like, Lord, help me to see what you see in me.
Mm.
Help me to delight in the things that you delight in me. I'm not sitting here saying like I can like answer your question about like what's going on. Why don't why aren't there areas that I delight in myself or whatever like that? I'm not saying that is something I have knowledge to, but I think there is an understanding of like going to the Lord and asking Him about these things because He's so gentle with it. Especially with I think us who are trying to walk in the path of the Lord, who are like geared towards Him and want to be morally good people and want to be faithful in prayer and like develop this relationship with Jesus. Like, it is really true that Jesus is meek and humble of heart and that He is so gentle.
Yeah.
Each of us will experience Jesus in a different way because we're unique individuals.
Yeah.
And there's probably people who listen to this podcast and may not think like that's not my experience with the Lord. But from my own experience, when the Lord reveals something to my heart about myself, like I love those moments. It's very raw, very moments. I think it can be very like not invasive, but challenging at times to hear those things. But from my own experience, when the Lord reveals those things, whether they're good or bad, it's so beautiful to me when He like kind of pricks my heart and say like, this is the reason why you do this.
Yeah.
Or this is an area of your life that I really enjoy about you, because God has a general love for all of humanity, but that doesn't stop Him from loving us individually and particularly.
Yes.
So like I think perhaps a place for all of us to start is just asking the Lord, Jesus, what is about myself that you particularly enjoy, and see what He says.
Yeah.
And like something we were talking about before we went into this podcast is like the power of silence.
Yes.
Right? and to like literally sit in that silence and let the Lord bring things up internally in our hearts, right? And maybe the Lord just wants you to sit with him. Maybe that's going to be your experience. I don't know what your experience is going to be in those moments, but I think we have to give the Lord the chance.
Yeah.
And expect that he's going to do something with that, even if we don't see it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that, because I feel like that is kind of a practice I've begun to develop in this season of like how healing just self-acceptance is and self-acknowledgement, and not because I get some understanding or I get the next step to take. Like I was saying earlier, one of the like primary things I've been experiencing internally the last few months is this constant sense of kind of inner anxiety, like this wrestling of just asking, what am I made for? Who am I becoming? What should I put my time and energy to? Which is dangerous in a sense, because like I don't know those answers and I can't necessarily control them. And one of the things I've been doing to kind of be grounded is like literally just waking up and asking myself of, what do I feel like are like the 3 to 4 to 5 things I need to like accomplish and do today that are in line with what I do have understanding and clarity about and feel right. And so it's like today, one of them is doing a podcast and hanging out with you.
It's awesome.
And again, it's like, will I still be doing this in 6 months? Will this open up a path for like a job or more full-time work? Will it be like why did I do that? I'll never really understand. I have no idea. But one, that's okay. Not actually knowing is okay. And then specifically what I've been doing a lot is like when that anxiety comes up, like it's very intense inside, I'll literally force myself just to sit down and to be in silence and not try to figure it out, not try to make it go away, not try to understand it, but literally just like go, like just sit still, force myself to sit still and just experience it and be like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like that's okay that that's there.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it doesn't necessarily make it go away. Again, it's not like it brings clarity or understanding or why it's happening, but there's something about self-acceptance that I found utterly healing and grounding.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's funny enough, like I feel like by actually having this self-acceptance of, maybe I'm not where I want to be in certain areas of my life, or I'm frustrated that I'm experiencing certain things that I don't understand why I am. The simple fact of just accepting that and not trying to seek an answer or seek understanding, like work through it. What do I need to do to change it? But the simple fact of just accepting it is actually what I found helps me move forward and through it, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Like intentional inaction has allowed me to progress a lot more in that area than sort of like this white knuckling, I'm going to take ownership, I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to like force myself to change or understand, which is really funny. Like it's more about creating space for silence, creating space to do nothing, to just exist, is what's actually allowing me more quickly to come into a greater acceptance of my personhood and in my internal experience. And from that place, like being integrated and being whole, much more so than doing X, Y, or Z exercises or steps or, working mental workouts and figuring out these things of why I believe what I believe or why I think the way I do or why I feel or react to certain things, which is at least again to me as like who's driven to achieve and to accomplish, it's very challenging because it's so against my nature to not like, oh, what can I do to change this, which isn't always the answer.
Yeah, and I don't know if I share the same experience that you do about this. Like I don't have that same like desire to achieve. I have a desire to be. I have a desire to rest. Like that's always something that's been like a part of me is I just want to rest. I just want to sit and be, It may have to do something with like me growing up and seeing my parents always busy and stuff like that. So I want to do the opposite.
Yeah.
But there's a sense in where even when I picture heaven, like what heaven's going to be like, it's just me and the Lord sitting. That's not what heaven's probably going to be like. I don't know what heaven's going to be like. And that's the beautiful thing about the mystery, is that I don't know. And like we can kind of create our own like thoughts and stuff like that about that. And that becomes very fascinating. But I think there's a lot you said that is very true about acceptance, right? And I think when we're coming to like see ourselves as an adventure, right? I think part of it is that we do need to accept the things that we can't change about ourselves. I love the Serenity Prayer. It's one of my favorite prayers. Like part of it is accepting the things I cannot change. And I think that is very powerful to get to this place of life-giving peace, right? Where we realize that these things aren't as bad as they tend to be. Anxiety is not necessarily a bad emotion. It's for a purpose. There's a reason why we get anxiety. And to kind of accept that, like, okay, this is a part of my life, right? Can actually be very, very healing.
Yes.
Like, one of the things I deal with is I have OCD, and I am very open about it. This anxiety disorder, but one of the things I've noticed that is kind of like you, very healing for me, is to accept the fact that, this is probably always going to be a part of my life. I can't fully change that. There's certain things I can do to like curb the symptoms a little bit and like get myself into a good place. A lot of it is, the OCD is probably going to always be there unless the Lord decides to take it away. But this might be the thorn in my flesh, that is always going to be there. That's always going to be a place of humility for myself. That's always going to be a cross for me, unless the Lord, through natural or supernatural means, takes it away. But, I find a lot more peace in accepting the fact, like, Lord, you can do that if you want to. But like in the present moment, this is what I'm dealing with. And I'm going to accept that.
To maybe as we kind of come to a close here, to anyone struggling with self-acceptance, feeling that they have sort of an inability to be okay with who they are and what they're experiencing now, what's maybe an action or an exercise or some maybe just perspective that they could implement or subscribe to sort of take that first step into self-acceptance?
I think one of the things is a practical step. I think is always good. We're so negative nowadays. I think a lot of us tend towards the pessimistic, especially about ourselves. Like, I don't do this well, I don't do that well. I think one of the things to do is to literally write down the things that you do well and prop those up. One of the things I worked with 3-year-olds like back in the day, and we did this thing called Nurtured Heart, which is basically one of the things is giving a lot of positive energy towards the things that they do well. And the idea of it is you're starting to build a positive portfolio, they say,
I see.
about like who I am and about the things I do well. I think one of the steps is like, okay, take out a notebook, put it down on paper. Just don't think about it in your head, but put it down on paper. What are the things that I really do well? And start rejoicing in that fact. I think another practical thing is, even when we feel it or not, start an attitude of gratitude. They have, in psychology, they have a list of things that they have studied that they've noted that, like, this is what people do who live happy lives, right? And one of them is gratitude. Just start being thankful for the different things that you see. It could be something super small, right? And especially about ourselves, be thankful for the things in myself that I like. And someone could say, like, well, Chris, I don't like anything about myself. Start with something very small, start with something that, you don't think is very significant, but you do like kind of enjoy about yourself. And I think eventually we'll see that there's more about ourselves that we actually kind of like and we kind of accept. I think that's the first thing. Accept the things that you like about yourself. Accept the things that you think you do well. And then we get to a place of like, okay, I can accept the things that I don't like, that I have no control over. Or I can accept the things that maybe I don't like and that I can change, but I'm on the journey for it. Because a lot of things that we don't like about ourselves, we're not going to change overnight.
Yeah. Do you think we spend too much time and energy trying to change the things we don't like about ourselves, trying to overcome our natural weaknesses rather than doubling down on our strengths and just investing?
I think so, yeah. I think we do a lot of that. And I think in order to actually get better in the things we want to, we have to start using our strengths to our advantage. And that takes a lot of, like, there's great assessments out there that people can take that kind of show people's strengths in different areas. Those can be very helpful. to see, okay, what are my strengths, and like these assessments give actually words to our strengths, was actually is very helpful for
Yeah.
us, because then we can start to like, okay, once we have a word to something, we actually kind of know it a little bit more.
What you know about the working genius test?
Exactly. We love working genius.
What are you, do you know your two?
I think it's wonder and discernment.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I can see that. Mine were, I haven't taken it, but I'm like, I know myself enough. I was like, invention and galvanizing.
Oh,
I
100%.
was like,
I think that's so true
yeah.
for you.
I was like, I love creating. What was fun? I was having a conversation with a buddy, Will Kotheimer, recently, and he was telling me about this test. So I was like, oh, like, what are the 6 categories and stuff? And that actually, like you said, like when we have language for things, I think it often brings a sense of understanding and comprehension, which gives us sort of a security in it. And it was so helpful. Like I already kind of knew that about myself, that I like doing those things to my strength. But what was really great was hearing that, but then also hearing like the two that you're sort of naturally against. I was like, mine are definitely, it's like enablement and tenacity. I'm like, I hate, and the reason why that was like really consoling is sometimes I get really hard on myself of like, what, not that I necessarily have an overwhelming struggle with following through on things per se, but I'm like, gosh, why do I have such a distaste for it? You know? And I've always kind of seen that as a fault of like, so many people talk about so much of success is just follow through, of being willing to do the boring stuff longer than other people and etc. And so I kind of had this like negative view of myself. And then I was like, oh, that's actually okay. It's just my natural strength is I'm really good at ideation and creating and getting people rallied behind an idea or a new expression, a new way of living.
Yeah.
And it's actually better that then I can kind of pass the stewardship on of that. And it's funny, once I got that language, I was things that I've experienced in the last like 3, 4, 5 years of God has always in my life just given me a lot of opportunities in leadership where it's like, okay, blank canvas, this thing's never been done before, or it needs a total revamp. And I'm like, that's where I'm so excited. I'm like, it's been done. Like, what can we create? Pour all my energy into it. But then I get like bored. Like if something that's just been running and kind of is steady, I'm like, okay, boring. I'm like, new thing. I'm like, new thing. And I used to kind of see that as like a fault of why am I like that? Like, why can I not? Or why do I have not necessarily an inability to commit or to follow through, but why do I have such a distaste for it?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that's actually just totally okay. Like I don't need to be upset or over that. That's just like understanding my strengths, my weaknesses, what I have sort of natural inclinations to.
Absolutely. I feel the same way about like those kind of like tedious tasks and stuff like that. Some people like it. Like in my work right now, there are people who love spreadsheets and love, yeah, I know. Like, oh, I love those things. And like they pour themselves into them and that gives them life and stuff like that. But for me in my work, I like wondering about people and getting to know people and like finding that inner depth of the person. Right, because there's so much there. It's for me so fascinating. And also, like when someone comes to me with a decision, like, "Oh, is this a good idea or not?" I like coming up with a good like discernment of like, oh, these are the pros to this, these are the cons to this. I don't think this will quite work because of this or that reason. I think this will be a wonderful idea. I'm not an idea guy, but I can tell when something's a good idea or a bad idea. And I think playing into those strengths is really good. And I think that builds gratitude. I think that builds gratitude because you recognize, oh, I'm actually really good at this. Like thank God I'm really good at this. Yeah, I think that's a start. I think Working Genius is wonderful. I think that there's another one out there. I can't remember.
Strain?
Yeah. Those are really good. Just Google them. They're great.
And I think that's a great place to end. Is a sense of gratitude and a sense of acceptance and just doubling down on what we have natural strength and desire for. Because that's a lesson I've been learning in my life is I'm 23 years old, so in my vast experience of age and wisdom. But on a serious note, I've learned, this is something I've learned in this new season of, there's just not time for beating around the bush, for compromise, for a lack of directness. Like just expressing exactly what I want, how I want it, why I want it, and allowing people to come that want to share and walk in that vision. Because then everyone else is way happier. Because like I'm not trying to convince or sell people into a vision they don't want to be a part of, and then I'm saying exactly what would need to be said to the type of people that would want to get in on it. And then so it's like I connect more quickly with the people, the communities, the type of work that feels aligned, and then I'm bringing other people into that. And then again, I'm not wasting time and energy and getting frustrated over people that don't want that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's like as we go, me and you go forward, and as anyone watching this goes forward, just an encouragement to not compromise on what you actually want and to have security in that.
Yeah.
And then to share that openly with people and invite people into that. And I think we would find a lot more alignment in meaning and satisfaction if we could just start with some self-honesty.
100%.
That's been another episode of Living the Lay Life podcast. Until next time, guys. Bye. Boop.